cheer us out, and they made that decision. That view is not really the view of scholars. It's more thought to be a fluid exercise, and it's quite possible that the reason that certain books were chosen is that these were just the books that people read, and it developed more bottom up than top down. It wasn't the rabbi saying, these are the books you're allowed to keep, but rather the people saying, these are the books that we read, and we keep them. But following the traditional question, the Talmud kind of goes around and they ask about certain books that seem to be different from others. And the term that they use for a book that makes it is it's called metameh et hayadayim. It makes your hands impure. That is, there's the tradition that you don't touch the Torah, and when you're reading, we use the yad and all this, that if you touch the Torah, it's going to make you impure. So only a holy book, right, would make your hands impure. If it was a secular book, then it wouldn't be a problem. So the way that the rabbis, say, is this book deemed holy? Say, well, does it make your hands impure? I should tell you sort of as a personal piece. Maybe I'll tell you that. So we have this. While you're closing the door, I'll just say the second tract. This is why I left Jewish day school. It's a shame that I did, but okay. The second tractate of Talmud I ever used, or chapter of Talmud I ever learned, was from Shabbat, the 16th chapter of Shabbat, which is called the Elu Matzilim, which are the books that you save in a fire. And this is where the rabbi made a mistake. If the rabbi had said, the reason that we want to know which books you're allowed to save in a fire on Shabbat is because if the rabbi said you could save it must have been an important book, and now we get a lens into which books the rabbi is considered to be important. But that's not how it was introduced. The rabbi said, we all know that if there's a fire on Shabbat, you're not allowed to put it out. Because if you put out your fire, then your neighbor is going to see you putting out a fire on Shabbat, and he's going to think that you're allowed to extinguish fire on Shabbat. So since you're not allowed to save your house on Shabbat, which books can you save? That was the end of it. He lost me from there, and then I came back. Yeah, and that's why I feel like I have the weight of my shoulders. One misstep, one misquotation, and 30 years down the road, someone's going to say, I walked away from Judaism because that idiot said. All right. Anyway, please don't walk away. Tell me if I say something stupid. I will apologize. All right. So there's a tractate in the Talmud called Yadayim, hands, and in there we have this piece, this Mishnah from chapter 3. And so we start off and say, which books make your hands impure? A book that was erased, such that 85 letters remain. Why 85? Because there is this section in Numbers where it says, "Vayehi bin Soah Haaron," when the ark was carried, Moses would say this. When the ark rested, Moses would say that. What's special about those sections in the Torah? Nobody's seen them before. So they are surrounded by these two upside-down nuns.
Oh, that's right.
And nobody knows why the nuns are there, but that's the way Torahs are written. You follow whatever the scribe before you did. Anyway, there's 85 letters in that section. The rabbis considered that to be like a holy book, like a book unto itself in some way. It was marked out. So they say 85 is the minimum number. If the book has 85, it's considered a holy book. If you have a scroll on which, so if the whole book was erased, except for 85 letters, it's still holy. If you have a book that somebody was writing, but he only wrote the first few words, when does it become holy? When he's written 85 letters. Okay, fine.
But you got a difference between hand and hands.
Yeah, but that's just my quick translation.
Ah, okay.
Hebrew is both Yadayim. All right, but that paragraph doesn't matter. That was just for starters to get you into the mood. All right, all writings of Scripture render the hands impure. Song of Songs and Ecclesiastes render the hands impure, to which you have to ask, well, if you just said all parts of the Torah all parts of Scripture say that they're holy, then why are you singling out Song of Songs and Ecclesiastes? Rabbi Judah taught Song of Songs renders the hands impure, but there's a debate regarding Ecclesiastes. Rabbi Yossi taught Ecclesiastes does not render the hands impure, but there's a debate about Song of Songs. So whatever it is, those two books, Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs, the problem with Song of Songs is it's all that love poetry, and it's erotic, and it doesn't seem like it belongs to be studied in a Beit Midrash. The problem with Ecclesiastes, he says all that stupid stuff. Okay. Rabbi Shimon taught that Ecclesiastes is among the leniencies of the house of Shammai and the stringencies of the house of Hillel. I hope I'm going into a little bit of detail, but give you a sense of how the rabbis think. Hillel and Shammai debate with each other all the time in the Talmud. There are like 4 cases where we know that Shammai is the lenient one and Hillel is the strict one. Lenient means, by the way, right, that the book's not scripture. If you say that Ecclesiastes is not a holy book, then you're being lenient, because that means you're saying it doesn't. If you touch it, it doesn't make your hands impure. Right? Okay, but the point is that Hillel said Ecclesiastes was sacred. Shammai said that it's not. Rabbi Shimon ben Azai taught, I received the tradition from the mouths of the 72 elders on the day that they installed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah as the head of the Sanhedrin. The Song of Songs and Ecclesiastes render the hands impure. Again, I wanted to give you a sense of the flavor of the magnitude of what the rabbis were thinking of this book. So what are they talking about the day of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? There was a case that happened in the Talmud where the rabbis were sitting around in a conference like this, and Rabbi Joshua was, Rabbi Gamliel was the leader, and Rabbi Joshua was one of the students, and Rabbi Joshua asked him a question about whether or not you have to recite Mariv. Rabbi Gamliel embarrassed Rabbi Joshua. The rabbis said, no more is Rabbi Gamliel going to be the leader of the Sanhedrin. They deposed him, and they took a very young Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and they made him the head of the Sanhedrin. By the way, he was very young, and that's why in the Passover Seder, he's the one who says, here I am, like a man of 70. Why is he like a man? Because he's so smart, but he's really very young. Anyway, and the tradition is that on that day, all of the vexing questions that were bothering the rabbis, they solved them all that day, including whether or not Kohelet was holy. Whether, right? They figured it out. I don't want to go into it that much further. The Rabbi Akiva goes on the next paragraphs and says, no, Song of Songs is holy of holies. They're really only fighting about Kohelet. And then they come down and they say, no, we figured it out. Kohelet is a holy book. Not to worry. But the point that I want to make is that there is this ambivalence about whether the book is in the same category as, say, Psalms or Genesis or something like that. Turn the page over for a second. And in Tractate of is that interesting to people? Tell me later if it wasn't. There was a bit of an aside for you, and then that's it. On the other side of the page, there's a little bit of a discussion of why did they have this ambivalence towards Kohelet, right? So Rabbi Joshua said in the name of Rab. All right, so now the other piece is, if Kohelet is not a holy book, then it deserves to be hidden, put in a geniza, never to be read. And he says, the sages wanted to get rid of this book of Ecclesiastes, to hide it, because its words contradict one another. They don't like what it says. He disagrees with himself. So why did they not hide it? Because they cherry-picked. It begins and ends with Torah. It begins with Torah, as it says, what real value is there for a man in all gains he makes beneath the sun? Right? And we interpret that saying, well, don't think that he's saying oh, it's such a negative book, nobody can ever gain anything from all their work, there's no point in doing anything. But he just says, under the sun, there's no word. But before the sun, because there's a tradition that the Torah existed before the sun was created, there is word. In other words, how did the rabbis interpret Ecclesiastes' negativity? They said, well, he was just saying that if you live a life without Torah, then life is futile. But if you know Torah, if you follow Torah, then life is totally worth living. In other words, they had to interpret the lines they disagreed with, they had to interpret in a way that agreed with them. I think there might be a different message, but I just want to give you a sense of the history of how it fit in. And I heard Ted muttering, yes, the Art Scroll commentary on every single verse, and it says futility, say, no, but if you follow the Torah, it won't be futile. Okay. It ends with words of Torah, because this, the second to last verse of the book, this second paragraph here, says, Sof davar hakol nishma, sum of the matter, when all is said and done, revere God and observe His commandments, for that is the sum of mankind. That the other reason that they kept the book is because of those last couple of verses that say the antidote to the world that's not worth living is to follow Torah. Some scholars suggest that those last two verses aren't even part of the original text, but they seem to have redeemed the text. What about this part where it's we'll look at part 3, that words contradict one another? Because in chapter 7 he says anger is better than revelry, but in chapter 2 he says I like to praise revelry. Revelry is a great thing. And in chapter 8 it says I therefore praise enjoyment. Whereas in chapter 2, it says, enjoyment, what good is that? Right? So again, there's no contradiction. Anger is better than revelry. Well, there's good anger and there's bad anger. Right? Good anger is the anger of the Holy One toward the righteous in the world to come, which is better than the revelry. When bad anger is the revelry where the wicked people enjoy themselves in the land that they're in. In other words, they are taking this text and they are matching it up with their theology. Kohelet looks at the world and says, what is the point of living? Righteous people suffer, wicked people are rewarded. It seems so unfair. And then Kohelet will then go and say, well, the solution is moderation. Don't be too righteous, don't be too wicked, you'll kind of keep it in the middle, you'll be okay. But the rabbis go back and say, no. Righteous people suffer in this world because, they have to get, all their sins punished now while they're living, but they're going to be rewarded in the eternal world to come. And the opposite is true for wicked people. They go through that again and again. They read the text. They read Kohelet so that it lines up with their theology, which probably means that Kohelet was part of the Bible because people liked it, and once it became a fait accompli that people liked it, and it seems to be teaching something different than what I want to teach, they did what rabbis do today. When you want to give a message and it seems contradictory to whatever the Torah portion is of the week, well, you spin a thumb in a certain direction and suddenly the Torah portion of the week is saying exactly what you wanted it to say. We never do that. We just always do that. That's sort of how they played with Ecclesiastes. I'm going to stop there. Does anybody have any questions before we do? Yeah, Harold.
Why is this singled out for ambivalence over contradictions, internal contradictions? I mean, don't you find, did the rabbis see contradictions in all the other books somewhere?
So I'll say two things. It's a good question. So if they there's contradictions everywhere, why do they see it? So first of all, they do seem to ask similar questions, like say about Job compared to the rest of the Bible. Deuteronomy says, the wicked are going to be punished And Job turns around and certainly questions that, and also God comes down and says, "You can't tell me what to do. You know, I know all the answers to everything." So they do ask it there. And second of all, they don't single out this is the only reason. So elsewhere in the Talmud, we say that maybe the reason the rabbis didn't like it is because it's not divine enough. It purports to just be Solomon's own kind of writing of whatever he was thinking, but it's not, God speaking to Moses. It's too profane in the way that it's presented. So, yes, the modern reader reads the book and says, contradiction is what we're all about. That's when Bible gets interesting. All right, we're going to be here till 9 o'clock. Can I call for a 2-minute break? Talk about something. Or stretch, or whatever.
You know who's here, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we have most of these volumes. One series, like we have most of
She took her Elliot and reminded myself when I heard this.
It's a great story. Yeah, I understand. I understand that. Maybe he wasn't
He's a rabbi, so he has tons and tons of canal, and all varieties. So this was a bar mitzvah gift from my father, for him, the whole set. My daughter, that's what he gave my daughter also. And so in both of their rooms, as they were gone and we were still in the house, were 2 sets of sunseed. And I am yet from an individual volume. I wasn't even proud of it. I think I had one also where that is. So my daughter, pardon me, it's a relatively new, so embarrassing to learn. I said, Mom, this will be easy for you. Well, I tend to do the same parts over and over, so it's a lot easier than learning something new. Where is your son? He's not a pulpit reader. He's in schools, he's in Boston.
So this one,
Yes, because the one, the volumes that I had is just kind of
All right. Well, so I needed to call a break for a second because I did want to show you 2 books that are worthwhile. So this one, the 5 Megillah, this is the one that the synagogue uses. It's a little bit old, 1969, but it does have some good introductions that are there. The one that I really like is just a few years old. Some of you might be familiar with the JPS Torah Commentary series. The only problem with the JPS series is that they're a little bit costly. $45 or $50 for a book. Sometimes you can find it used online. But this one's done by Michael Fox. Much of what I'm doing and where I'm going is coming from this commentary. So let's start with the very beginning. Let's go to chapter 1. And we'll try to read them together and to talk. I do have now, since I got my book, I have an extra copy if anybody needs.
No, we're set.
We're set. That's the same color.
The
In fact,
corner
it's
here
exactly
first.
the same color copy there. All right, who wants to read? Who's going to volunteer here? I've been talking for 35 minutes.
I'll read.
All right, go, Frank.
The words of Koheleth, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Utter futility, said Koheleth. Utter futility, all is futile.
All right, so sorry, I forgot to close the door. They'll be done. They'll be done at 8:30. So this is the only place where they subscribe a name, and that's why it's connected with Solomon. Besides the fact that Solomon is purported to be, right, it's described as the wise king. But you're supposed to have this feeling of contrast, right? What does the word futility, hevel? What does the word hevel mean? In other ways, it's like a breath. And there might be a little bit of onomatopoeia because it's, what did they say? That all the letters are kind of open. If you look at the letters, the hey, the vet, and the lamed, they're all open. It's like it's just going there. I had a sort of Kohelet moment when I was at my first rabbinical assembly convention. So I was like a year out of rabbinical school, and I was very excited. My rabbi, who I had grown up with, was retired, and he was at the convention, and we were on a bus somewhere or something, and we're going through, and it was the most depressing sort of 25-minute bus ride I've ever been on. And the contrasts were because he's telling me, he had just retired. Well, synagogues are going to fall apart. The whole Jewish world is there. I've been teaching, all these people for years, and look at all the people who had bar mitzvah in my synagogue. None of them are doing anything Jewish anymore in their life, etc. And here I am, I'm thinking to myself, I spent my entire childhood watching you tell me how Judaism is the answer. I'm looking at you as a successful rabbi that I want to be like, and you're telling me it was all a waste of time, right? And that's kind of what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have in your mind here Solomon, the one who had all the wealth, all the wisdom, everybody's there, and he's kind of saying, yeah, I've done it all. I'm looking back at my life, and what have I gained? Right? I was born, I'm going to die. And we're all
Why does the new translation use the word futility when the traditional one used the word